Hello, heroes! I'm Kato, and this, I'm proud to say, is a video on the new and improved Oblivion Remaster. I'm saying new and improved in a literal sense because there's more than just a new coat of paint, and some of it is under the surface, or it feels like it's been there the whole time because it's just that subtle. So if you discover some of those subtleties, especially you veterans, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. While my tips and tricks for the original version of Oblivion still largely do apply to this version too, and you can find it linked below, I will also include some alterations or changes that did happen with, say, the leveling system. So this will be a combination of these are the new features that I found, as well as some more tips and tricks for Oblivion Remastered. So here are this many tips and tricks I wish I knew when I first started playing the Oblivion Remaster. Right off the bat, if you're watching either trailers or checking out the game for yourself, there are, some very clear visual differences compared to the original game, with the Unreal Engine doing the heavy lifting when it comes to visuals, and the Gamebryo/Creation Engine side still operating the quests and the NPC AI and stuff like that. Fortunately, in the character creator now, it's not a monumental task to make a semi-attractive or decently looking character, but also if you want to send all the sliders one direction or another, you can still make a monstrosity if you want to as well. The first character I decided to make was a Khajiit, and while their racial abilities still aren't that good, I wanted to see how the beast races looked in this version of the game, and I'm happy to say that both Argonians and Khajiit look pretty good in this version, maybe even the best they've ever looked in a single-player Elder Scrolls game. Now also, when you create your character, you can now choose a background to those characters, which used to adjust their stats based on the choice of male or female, letting you further customize your starting stats. If you were familiar with the game already and blasted your way through the tutorial, you might have missed the change that happened with one birth sign in particular, and that is the Lord. How it used to work is it would give you a lesser power for quite a bit of healing at the beginning, with a long-term penalty of a 25% weakness to fire. With the amount of Daedra that use fire on you, this was a pretty massive penalty. Now the remaster has not only been reworked to be all positives, but it's also probably one of the strongest birth signs in the game now, giving you two passives in the form of Shield 15 and Resist Magic 15%, making you incredibly durable in the first few levels of the game, and also just scaling as you progress, because other shield and magic resist effects will stack with these. So if you were considering getting the Steed Stone again, remember that we do have a sprint button now, and being able to resist both damage and spells is useful throughout the entire game. The tedious minigames of the original Oblivion are still intact, and I actually found the tumbler lockpicking minigame to be more difficult. Oh well, I got the skeleton key at level 10 and don't have to worry about it now, which is a Daedric artifact, and you can find the guide below. The persuasion minigame did get a little adjustment that is nice, and I would consider a quality of life change. If you're not familiar, you have a circle with 4 wedges that you can choose based on the NPC's facial expression. After you've made one attempt and following attempts with that NPC, those wedges will now have different colors to more easily identify their responses. Obviously, green is the most positive and red is negative. Again, this is just another small quality of life thing that makes the persuasion minigame that much more straightforward. That is until you spellcraft your Charm 100 spell. Towards the end of the tutorial is when you choose your class, either through numerous presets or the custom option. In classic Oblivion, your 7 major skills that you choose are directly linked to your character levels. Level those 7 major skills 10 times, you get a player level. That's no longer the case. Now, all of your skills in the remaster, when increasing them, do contribute to your character's level. The major skills contributing the most, but minor skills will now also contribute to your character level. While on the topic of leveling up, one of the biggest changes in the remaster is related to leveling up and point distribution. Now, instead of the skill gains dictating where those points and bonuses go, you can now distribute them manually however you want, to 3 of your attributes. If you want a lot of health, you can now just put 5 points every single level into endurance. Luck is the odd one out here and takes 4 virtues to increase by 1 point, but the rest of them take points 1 for 1. Speaking of welcome changes, a lot of the combat-related skills got reworked too. And the one thing that gave me a sigh of relief when I read it was there's no directional power attack requirements for like any of the effects anymore. So when you hit milestones with your blade, blunt, and hand-to-hand, just using a power attack is enough for the bonus effect, not which direction you're holding at the time. And oh, speaking of reading things, it's not a mystery anymore what your milestones will do. They're actually listed in 2 separate places in the menus now by selecting Show Details in the character menu and also in the help menu. Each combat style has notable differences now too in the remaster, some giving you the best parts in earlier milestones. With hand-to-hand, for example, when you hit Journeyman, your power attacks get a chance to disarm. In the classic, that required you to hit Master. Blade specialization now has milestones related to making enemies weaker to normal weapons, and eventually causing your regular attacks to have a slight chance to make your opponents take bleed damage. Blunt is now no longer identical to Blade when it comes to milestones either. And when you hit Journeyman, power attacks give you a temporary shield, and later, your regular attacks having a chance to silence enemies. Once you hit Expert in the block skill, you can then perform a shield bash, which was never a thing in the original Oblivion. Not to worry, Stealth Archers, you also have some benefits for the Marksman skill, which is to say, now in the remaster, this is the only skill that provides a chance to paralyze at its higher milestones. I'm a bit jealous that Hand-to-Hand lost this ability, but I hope you enjoy. The last 2 I want to mention are Athletics and Acrobatics. Athletics obviously got reworked for the sake of sprinting being a thing in the game now too, with 3 of its milestones relating to less and less fatigue usage up to a mastery of no fatigue usage. And Acrobatics, mostly still relating to jumping, now gives us the dodge function sooner by giving it to us at Apprentice, which is 25 skill. With the new mobility working as well as it does, I am grateful that it is accessible this quickly. Quelling some of the randomization of this game, now when it comes to picking ingredients for your alchemy or just for profiting from, it is now guaranteed that you'll get those ingredients. And they also seem to replenish much more quickly than they used to. The same can be said with the various fountains that recover magicka, health, and the Ayleid buff ones as well. They all seem to replenish quite a bit faster than they used to. I found 2 magicka fountains in a Daedra tower, burned all my magicka leveling restoration, turned around, and after a few more seconds, the other fountain had replenished. Speaking of alchemy, did you know each of the alchemy tools beyond the mortar and pestle can give you bonuses? Apparently that's been there since the original, but you can actually see those effects in the alchemy crafting menu now just by hitting this button. This told me that I can leave my heavy alembic behind and only need to carry a calcinator and retort along with the mortar and pestle to maximize the benefits that I want. It's a nice little change that the game does explain more things to the player if they're looking for it. Those are the main changes with skills that stood out to me, but this also segues really well into the help tab of the menus, which doesn't just repeat showing every single skill and its milestones, but also the actual numbers, the percentages that you get. I wouldn't have known otherwise that my character's hand-to-hand disarm chance was 25% if I wasn't able to check here. Generally, if you have a question about one of the gameplay systems, they did a really good job on explaining that in the help menu, including things also like, oh, how to soul trap, or how do you join a certain faction? If you've been away for a long time and are like, oh, how do I join the Thieves Guild again? The help menu will give you hints on where to do that. If you are experienced in the clunk of classic Oblivion, you may remember that canceling a knocked arrow involved just shooting the ground. Now in the remastered version, we can conveniently hit the sheath button to just put our bow away and not shoot the arrow that we reconsidered firing at someone. One change that I found quite entertaining, but it makes sense, is zombies are a bit more modest now and cover up their rotten bits. If the Oblivion Remaster is your first time playing, good. You don't have to see that. That's not to say there aren't other gross things in Oblivion, though. The Goblin Shaman staff is particularly disgusting, and you can also make it talk if you move back and forth, which can be entertained for longer than I probably should have been. I won't talk about the improved animations very long, but I am a bit of a animation sleut, as it were. And Oblivion Remastered just feels nice to play. The combat is greatly improved, all the player animations seem to have been reworked, even though the sprint animation itself didn't have to go that hard. And some of the enemy ones have been too, as well as hit reactions that the enemies have when you hit them successfully, also when they block your attacks. And if you enjoy the third-person camera, hey, you have those saucy animations as well as a lot of it matching up way better than it used to. And I think this is the first time I can say that I've enjoyed playing in both third and first-person camera, whereas I usually do everything in first person. Instead of being a separate input, you can now pick up and manipulate objects by holding down your activate or confirm button. You can of course use this to move bodies into a pile, put them in doorways and shut them on them and giggle at the physics, or decorate your player home like a normal adventurer. That's me, totally normal adventurer Kato. The DLCs and expansions were included in the remaster, the main ones, including the Shivering Isles, Knights of the Nine, the various player homes, the Mehrunes Razor, the spell tomes appearing throughout the loot tables, and, of course, the original horse armor. All of these kind of occur naturally now, as opposed to you getting bombarded with a bunch of quests when you leave the sewers at the beginning of the game, so you can really take in the world without interruption. And this is a welcome change in my mind because it doesn't take away the step-out moment that Bethesda games are so, known for. But in case you still want to know or be reminded where these DLCs start, here are those locations, including the Deluxe Edition ones too. And if you're looking for recommendations of player homes, might I recommend Frostcrag Spire. Not just because we can now see it from where we start the game by just looking towards the Gerald Mountains, but this is the player home that has the easily accessible enchanting and spellcrafting tables once you've spent a couple thousand gold on the candles for them. Quite a few aspects of the combat, while subtle, have made it far less frustrating too. Like in the original, it was fairly easy to get stagger locked, especially if you had a low agility. And because that stagger animation was so incredibly long, you could just get stuck. You would not be able to do anything, and then you would just die. Well, getting staggered isn't removed entirely in the remaster. You still can get staggered, but you need to be completely depleted of your fatigue in order for that to happen. And if you're also curious, yes, you can still get ragdolled to the floor if you get hit by fatigue damaging moves while your fatigue is empty. The classic game also had a damage penalty depending on how low your fatigue was when you attacked. I don't believe that's there anymore either. Like, you'll just do the same amount of damage according to the stats of your gear and your base attributes instead of also relying on your fatigue. Health management also had a bit of a change. This may be a more controversial one for some of us, but we now have, outside of combat, a passive health regen. So instead of having to use the wait function or find a bed to quickly recover HP without using our potions or other health resources, we can now just passively regenerate when we're not in danger. I found this somewhat jarring in the beginning during the tutorial because it was fast due to how low my HP was, but it did kind of level out over time and feels a bit more fair later on. And using the wait function half as much does also feel kind of nice. Oblivion's arguably outdated durability system also got an update in the remastered version, and instead of equipment becoming completely useless once it hits 0 durability, they can now still be equipped. They are just much less effective. So if your weapon is broken, you can still use it, but it is going to be 50% as effective as it would be if it's repaired. If you are wearing broken armor, it is 75% less protective. Even with a high armor skill, you're going to go through a lot of repair hammers before you hit master. So it's nice to get a little more leeway here when it comes to usable items that are in disrepair. The iconic Cyrodiil map is pretty much exactly as it was before. Just don't look too closely at the original map versus the new icons that we have to work with. Speaking of the icons for each of the locations throughout the map, you can now toggle them on and off. If you're looking for specific things like dungeons or Oblivion gates or campsites, or disable ones that you consider just kind of useless once you've been there once. You can also still set your own marker, which will show up as blue on your compass. And this one took me a while. If you are searching for the interior map and notice, hey, there's no tab for it, you have to zoom all the way in on the map in order for the interior map to show up. And this is a note for the developers, this would be a great feature if it kept my position every time I opened the map, but it doesn't. I have to zoom in every single time. Please patch. Is it just me who still uses interior maps? I don't know what it is about modern gaming, but it seems like interior maps are becoming a thing of the past and I really don't want them to be. Sorry to encumber you with my side rant. Speaking of encumbrance, it slows you instead of stops you completely in your tracks in the Oblivion Remaster. So now you don't have to drop the heaviest things you're carrying just on the ground wherever and can lug them to the nearest shop or hop on a horse and get there a little bit faster. Maybe just like Skyrim. Now I open the floor to you, heroes. What kinds of neat little tips have you discovered in the Oblivion Remaster? Leave them in the comments below. And if you're looking for more Oblivion-based guides, I got you covered there too when it comes to Daedric artifacts, Ayleid statues, how to get black soul gems, and other sweet loot you can find linked here and in the description. If you found this guide useful, entertaining, or both, please do whatever you see fit to show that, and among the ways you can is by supporting on Patreon, like the heroes of Kvatch on screen now, including Wasteland Legends, Sven, and Rose. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Kato, and may you wander Cyrodiil like you own it.